Before you lay your head down to rest tonight, have you truly placed your trust in God's love? I want to share something with you that could change your life. You see, many people go through life carrying burdens, feeling alone, and questioning their worth. But what if I told you that there is a love that never fails, a love so powerful that it can bring peace to the stormiest of hearts? Stay with me, because by the end of this message, you'll understand why trusting in God's love is the key to a life of victory, peace, and unshakable joy. I'm so glad you've decided to spend this time with me today. We live in a world where everything seems to be changing at lightning speed or circumstances, our relationships, our emotions. But there is one thing that never changes, and that's God's love for you. Today, we're going to dive deep into what it means to trust in His love. Not just in the good times, but especially when life gets hard, when you're confused, when you're afraid, or when you're waiting for something that seems like it'll never come. God's love is the anchor that holds us steady through it all. But here's the thing, many people know about God's love, but they don't really trust in it. They don't let it guide their decisions, soothe their fears, or bring peace to their hearts. Today, I want to help you change that. I want to show you how trusting in God's love can transform every area of your life. So let's begin this journey together. Life is full of challenges. Sometimes it feels like you're being hit from all sides: work pressures, family issues, health concerns, and personal struggles. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like you're drowning in a sea of problems with no way out. But in these moments, God's love is there as a lifeline. You might wonder, how can God love me and let me go through such hard times? But let me tell you, God's love isn't about keeping you from difficulties. It's about carrying you through them. His love is like a fortress that you can run to for safety. It's a light that guides your path, even when everything around you seems dark. Think about it. When was the last time you really trusted in God's love during a difficult time? Did you try to handle everything on your own, or did you lean on Him? God is inviting you to let go of the burden and let Him be your strength. When you trust in His love, you'll find that you're stronger than you ever thought possible. You'll discover a peace that doesn't make sense to the world, a peace that comes from knowing that you are deeply loved by the Creator of the universe. But what about those times when you feel completely lost and you don't understand what's happening in your life? How can you trust in God's love when nothing makes sense? We'll get to that in just a moment, but first, let's talk about the importance of trust in the midst of confusion. There are times in life when nothing seems to make sense. You might be asking, why is this happening to me? Why did I lose my job? Why did that relationship end? Why am I facing this illness? It's natural to have these questions. But trusting in God's love means trusting that He sees the bigger picture, even when you don't. God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We might not understand why certain things happen, but we can trust that God's love is always working for our good. It's like a child who doesn't understand why their parent is doing something, but trusts that it's for their benefit. In the same way, we need to trust that God's love is guiding us, even when we don't understand His plan. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He was sold into slavery by his brothers, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. For years, nothing in his life made sense. But Joseph trusted in God's love, even in the darkest times. And in the end, God used all of those difficult experiences to bring about a great victory, not just for Joseph, but for an entire nation. Speaking of victory, have you ever felt afraid of what the future holds? Fear can be paralyzing, but it'll show you how trusting in God's love can help you overcome even the greatest fears. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Fear is something we all experience. It might be fear of the future, fear of failure, or fear of the unknown. Fear can creep into our hearts and make us doubt God's goodness. But the Bible tells us that perfect love casts out all fear. When you trust in God's love, fear loses its power over you. Imagine walking through a dark and unfamiliar place. You're scared, but then someone you trust takes your hand and says, "Don't worry, I'm with you." That's what God's love does for you. It's with you in every dark valley, in every storm, and in every uncertain situation. When you trust in His love, you can walk through life with confidence, knowing that you are never alone. It's important to remember that God doesn't promise us a life without challenges, but He does promise that His love will be with us through it all. When fear tries to take hold of your heart, remind yourself of God's love. Speak His promises over your life. Declare that His love is greater than any fear you're facing. Now, what about those times when you're waiting for something in answer to prayer, a breakthrough, or a dream to come true? Waiting can be so difficult, but there's something powerful that happens when you trust in God's love during the waiting season. He'll explain more about that in just a moment. Waiting is one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? Whether you're waiting for a job, waiting for healing, or waiting for a loved one to come back to God, the waiting season can feel endless. But God's timing is perfect, and His love is patient. Trusting in God's love means trusting in His timing. Think about the story of Abraham and Sarah. They waited for years for the promise of a child. During that time, they had to trust in God's love and His timing, even when it seemed like nothing was happening. It wasn't easy, but in the end, they saw God's promise fulfilled. In your waiting, trust that God's love is at work. He hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing something beautiful for you. And sometimes, the waiting is necessary to prepare your heart for what God has in store. Remember, God's love is patient, and it's working behind the scenes, even when you can't see it. But what happens when you feel weak, like you just can't go on? How can you trust in God's love when you have no strength left? We're going to dive into that next. We all have moments of weakness, times when we feel like we just can't keep going. It's in those moments that God's love shines the brightest. When you are weak, He is strong. Trusting in God's love means allowing Him to be your strength when you have none left. The Apostle Paul wrote about a thorn in his flesh. He asked God to remove it. But God's response was, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul learned to trust in God's love, even in his weakness, and that's what we must do too. When you trust in God's love, you'll find that His grace is always enough for whatever you're facing. His love doesn't demand that you be strong all the time. It's okay to admit that you're struggling, to admit that you're weak. God's love is there to lift you up, to carry you through, and to give you the strength you need to keep going. But what about when things are going well? When you're celebrating victories and enjoying blessings, do you still need to trust in God's love? Absolutely, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. Trusting in God's love isn't just for the tough times. It's also for the good times. When you're celebrating a victory, a blessing, or a moment of joy, remember to trust in God's love. Give Him thanks, and acknowledge that every good thing comes from His hand. It's easy to forget about God when things are going well, but true trust in His love means recognizing Him in the highs and the lows. Whether you're on the mountaintop or in the valley, God's love is the constant that sustains you. Celebrate His love in every season of your life, and you'll find that your joy is made complete in Him. Think about the story of the 10 lepers who were healed by Jesus. Only one of them came back to give thanks. He recognized that his healing was a result of God's love and grace. Let's be like that one leper who returned to give thanks. Let's remember to trust in God's love, even in the good times, and to give Him the glory for every blessing. Now, what about the people in your life? How can trusting in God's love impact your relationships and the way you care for others? We're going to explore that next. Trusting in God's love isn't just about your own life. It's about trusting that His love is at work in the lives of others too. Sometimes we worry about the people we care about, our family, our friends, our children. We want to protect them, guide them, and make sure they're okay. But remember, God loves them even more than we do. Trust that God's love is pursuing them, guiding them, and protecting them. Pray for the people in your life, and trust that God's love is reaching out to them in ways you may never see. Your prayers are powerful, and they connect you to the heart of God's love. Trust that He is at work, even when you can't see it. When you trust in God's love for others, it frees you from the burden of trying to control everything. It allows you to release them into God's care, knowing that His love is greater than anything you could ever offer. We've talked about trusting in God's love in so many areas of life, but there's one more thing we need to discuss. What does it really mean to live a life of complete trust in God's love? How can you make this a daily practice? Let's dive into that as we begin to wrap up this message. Living a life of complete trust in God's love is a journey, not a destination. It's something we grow in day by day. It starts with small steps, choosing to trust God in the little things, and gradually building up to trusting Him in the big things. It's about making trust in God's love a daily practice. Every morning, remind yourself of God's love. Speak His promises over your life. Declare that you trust Him with your day, your decisions, your relationships, and your future. When challenges come, don't let them shake your trust. Instead, let them drive you deeper into God's love. One of the best ways to grow in trust is to remember what God has done in the past. Look back at the times when He has been faithful, when His love has seen you through difficult situations. Let those memories strengthen your trust for the future. And remember, trusting in God's love doesn't mean you'll never have doubts or fears. It doesn't mean you'll always have all the answers. But it does mean that you'll have a foundation that can't be shaken. God's love is that foundation, and when you build your life on it, you'll find a peace and strength that the world can't give. So, my dear friend, as you go about your day and as you lay down to sleep tonight, remember this. Trust in God's love. It's the foundation that will carry you through every season of life. When you trust in His love, you'll find peace in the storm, strength in the struggle, and joy in the journey. God's love for you is unending, unchanging, and it's right here, right now. All you have to do is trust. And as we close, I want to leave you with this thought. No matter where you are, no matter what you're facing, God is saying to you, trust in my love, for I am with you always. Let these words sink deep into your heart and let them guide you in all that you do. Trust in His love and watch how it transforms your life. If this message has touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And remember, God's love is the greatest gift you can ever receive. Trust in it always.